Trans Day of Vengeance is coming up on Friday. I was explaining this to some family members. They didn't believe me. They said, what is this? What's this security risk that is apparently cropping up? I said, there's a day called the Trans Day of Vengeance. They said, haha, what's it really called? So it's really called the Trans Day of Vengeance, and it's being promoted by fairly large accounts on social media, and it's a call for violence against anyone who dares to suggest that a man is not a woman and a woman is not a man.
Well, according to the protest creators, it's not about enacting harm upon people, but protesting like during Stonewall and stuff. But these accounts are getting banned on Twitter and stuff for the promotion of violence.
And it's being pushed specifically in Washington, D.C. and Tennessee, and it's being directed specifically at the Daily Wire, and these transgender activists are, in some cases, calling for very explicit violence. In some cases, there are videos that I'm not even going to play on this show that have gone viral of people essentially saying that the Christian school deserved what it got because they didn't accept transgender ideology. Hideous stuff. And but even the ones who are trying to not get kicked off of social media, they are very clearly calling for violence against people who disagree with them.
Trans people in Tennessee, it's time to fight. Trans allies in Tennessee, it's time to fight. Trans women, if they lock you up for identifying as a woman, fight, resist. You're gonna die anyways. We're going to die anyways. It's time to resist. Fight them. Hurt them. If they put their hands on you, beat them. We are at an attack. It's time to fight back. Do you hear me? Trans people in Tennessee, trans men, trans women, non-binary, fight! If they try to arrest you or have you arrested on a felony for existing, beat them.
Felony for existing? Put a pause there.
Get
Notice she keeps prefacing all of this with if, but the ifs are totally implausible.
No, the ifs aren't implausible. There are many states, hundreds of bills that have been passed targeting trans people. In Tennessee, you can be arrested for quote-unquote impersonating a man or a woman or wearing clothing of the opposite sex, and you have to detransition, along with all the violence towards trans people. Though she's talking about, in Tennessee, if cops try to arrest you for being drag or trans, to resist the arrest.
If they arrest you on a felony for existing, what does that mean? Nobody is suggesting that. I'm starting to, and it's not a woman too, right? It's a dude, I assume. I'm starting to think this fella might be a little bit confused.
He's obviously ignoring the law in Tennessee that has just been passed that was supported by, it was either him or somebody else with the Daily Wire. Can't remember right off the top of my head.
Huh. I'm starting to think something might be a little bit off about this guy. Usually I don't take threats all that seriously because people mouth off on social media and it's no big deal. But the reason I don't take them seriously is because most people are at least somewhat reasonable in the end. They might mouth off a little bit, but eventually they come to their senses. People who have lost their senses, people who have lost their capacity to reason about even the most basic things, they don't get reasonable again until they receive psychological and spiritual help.
Wow, that's hilarious. He's talking about people being sane and logical, but then advocates for quote-unquote spiritual help if you're a trans person because he considers them to be confused. It's religion is one of the most illogical things you can, be behind. He believes in a fictional deity. He believes in a book that talks about talking donkeys, talking snakes, bushes that can talk, how is that sane and logical?
Which is being explicitly denied them by our law and by our popular culture. Keep going.
Gang together. Get people who agree with you to come and fight. Carry a weapon at all times. And yes, you have to attack the police officer.
Attack everybody, fight, 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 carry a weapon at all times. You know,
Well, in Tennessee, permitless carry is now legal. So, I mean, nothing actually illegal about advocating for carrying a gun in a state where you can carry a gun without a permit. All thanks to Bill Lee. But, yeah, let's not actually just start attacking cops. That's not the best thing to do.
the Second Amendment is a right. The ability to defend oneself is a right. But as the libs always like to point out, these rights are not totally absolute, existing in a vacuum. They are conditioned by certain things and predicated on certain things. So you have a right to vote. You have a civil right to vote. But if you commit a felony, if you commit a number of infractions, you can lose that right to vote. You have a right to free speech, but you don't have a right to threaten people. That would be an abuse of speech. That would be speech that undermines speech. That would be a speech act that is not tolerated. You have a right to a gun. Felons lose their right to guns. All sorts of people lose their rights to guns. I am as strong a defender of the right to defend yourself in the Second Amendment as possible. If you have demonstrated a capacity, an incapacity to reason, if you are not capable of rational behavior, certainly that would be one of the reasons why you could not own a gun. This is why.
So what about people like him that believe in fictional creations that don't exist and try to tell everybody else that's how they should believe? He believes in a guy that rose from the dead after 3 days, walked on water and turned water into wine, can speak to spirits and demons and stuff. How is that not sane, and how is that not the incapacity to reason? So is he also advocating for guns to be taken from Christian people, or just trans people because he doesn't like them?
Why 5-year-olds are not allowed to go into the gun store and buy guns. They haven't reached the age of reason yet. And people can lose their reason for all sorts of reasons. And unfortunately, what we do in this society now is we call sanity insanity and insanity sanity. You want to talk about social media censorship? I discovered last night